one of the great legends, and continues to be a great star, is our wonderful friend Jim Bohannon, with a zillion stations, and took over for Larry King and has never dropped a beat.
There are three really big questions here, really important questions. One, to what extent is there a problem, quantifiable, that we can measure given accurate weather measurements that go back decades versus natural cycles that may go back millennia? Number two, to what extent can we accurately measure the impact of humanity on any such global cycles? And number three, to what extent can we accurately measure how dire and imminent is the threat that we must subordinate all other issues like our economy to answer that threat? Three very good questions. I've yet to hear three good definitive answers. I hear mostly a lot of crap and trade, frankly.
Joe?
Can I use that? Crap and trade. That's very, very nice. Very nice. That's great. You know, I was in Congress. I was opposed to offshore oil drilling. I was in Northwest Florida, whitest beaches, and I never had a scientific argument for it. It was about the politics of it. We didn't want to see oil drilling 10 miles off of our shore. But I knew the meddlesome arguments on the other side, which have become a lot more relevant after September 11th. And that is, correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been an accident since 1968, 1969. And I know that because Pat Buchanan said, I was with Nixon when it hit the fan, when it has hit the fan. But there haven't been a lot of accidents. It's something that, again, because there's just not a scientific justification for being against offshore oil drilling as far as it hurting the environment. Much more dangerous, obviously, is what we saw in Alaska back, what was that, late 1980s with Valdez, the moving of oil in tankers from one spot to another.
And I want to go to...
And it may be the issue of the century, but politically it's not even the century of the week. And I only say that because this is something that really, a lot like healthcare reform, matters an awful lot to people in the mainstream media. It is, and are ideologically more inclined to believe in global warming. And I don't say that it's not a reality. I'm just saying it gets more of a focus. And I say this because when cap and trade was being debated, NPR ran a poll. They asked about the top 20 issues that mattered the most to Americans. And number 20 was climate change. That doesn't mean it's not a legitimate issue. It just means that, again, there's still a lot of influencing to do. Most fascinating, though, has been the momentum against those who believe in climate change. Al Gore with Inconvenient Truth, when was that, 2005, 2006?
During the Ice Age.
During the Ice Age.
That's when he was relevant.
I'm very surprised by seeing the increasing skepticism, even before the scandal of the United Kingdom, because I really thought that Al Gore and others had made a breakthrough at that point. They haven't. The numbers continue to go down. Americans are growing increasingly skeptical. And again, this doesn't mean that those that believe in climate change and that it's man-made don't have a legitimate point. It just means that they are losing the PR war across America.
Should people in the media be talking about energy when it comes to issues of conscience, when it comes to dealing with the kinds of people that we're getting oil from, when it comes to guys like Chavez?
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. One of the reasons why I think we need to aggressively go after alternative energy sources has to do with national security more than anything else. You look at what's happened. Well, just look at the wars that we fought, the major wars we fought over the past 2 decades, whether you talk about the first Gulf War, whether you talk about, of course, what happened in Afghanistan because of terror attacks that were fueled by petrodollars, or if you look at the second Gulf War, these are wars that we would not have fought if there was nothing beneath the sand. You look at the next war
but let me ask you
that's likely to come, Iran. They are developing nuclear weapons because they have money from oil reserves.
And I hear you, and I think most everybody would agree with that. And I want to ask you this, and maybe Roger this. We've been talking about this being a political issue. How come people don't chastise him for getting out there and saying this was brought to you by the good people of Venezuela. Why don't the Kennedys get a slap on the hand?
Oh,
for
you're
that?
still going back to Joe
Yeah.
Kennedy.
Yeah.
I think some people have attacked Joe Kennedy Joseph Kennedy fairly aggressively for that.
What do you think about that,
after
Tom
all,
Hartman?
I've got to say he didn't run for Senate when Ted Kennedy died, and I think in part he was concerned about citizens. What is it? Citizens Oil. Citizens Energy, the connections. When I talk to people that know Joe, and I served with him, one of his real concerns was being morphed into Hugo Chavez in the campaign up in Massachusetts. So I think it cost him politically.
I want to ask Jim Bohannon, though. I mean, you hear from listeners all night long across the country. There's got to be an overall sense that we would like to get over, as you pointed out, sir, our dependence on certain countries. And yet there is this constant debate as to what is on the cutting edge of our energy sources. I mean, what are you hearing from people in terms of where they want to take this conversation? Because there are a couple of different directions we can go in, and we seem to be having the same debate every time.
So what do you say, Jim?
Well, first of all, my house I have declared deemed to be warm, so I don't actually have to heat it. It's very helpful. In terms of what my audience is talking about,
I'm confused.
got you on the rebound.
Don't tell
did
me
it?
more.
I think they recognize that there are other considerations here, and one of them certainly is the blackmail that we can be held to by nations like Saudi Arabia and others, which don't have our best interests at heart. And the economy is an important consideration. The environment is an important consideration. Those are not the only considerations. There are people out there who would do us harm, and we are often handing them the means by which to do it. And that's what I hear a lot, Mika, from my audience.